John, my husband who had been cheating for years, suddenly passed away. It happened while he was fooling around in one of his affair partner's apartments, only for another affair partner to burst in. Trying to escape, John, naked and clutching his clothes, fell off the balcony. I went to the scene. It was only the second floor. It wasn't that high, and he might have broken some bones, but should have survived. John must have thought he could jump and get away. He was just unlucky. Maybe this was some sort of cosmic punishment for him. When the police showed me a photo of John lying there, I felt less sadness than a sense that he got what he deserved. I was tired of his antics, and any love I once had for my breadwinning husband was long gone. To be honest, I didn't much care about the outcome. The bigger issue now is my mother-in-law, Sarah. I'm Nancy, a soon-to-be 45-year-old working mom. I married John 12 years ago, but we only started living with my in-laws 3 years ago. The catalyst was the passing of my father-in-law, Daniel. Sarah and I used to get along until she learned John was hardly ever home because he was cheating with multiple women. Especially when she drinks, she gets nasty. Sarah loves alcohol and always drinks at night, but she can't handle her booze. I hate to say it, but I often get blamed for John's affairs. People always assume, if John is cheating, then it must be Nancy's fault, right? Some even go as far as to say, Nancy lacks charm. It's her fault for not being enough for John. My mother-in-law, Sarah, always defends John. Why should John settle for someone as unattractive as Nancy? I was looking forward to having handsome grandchildren who look like John. It's one thing when she talks about me, but I can't stand it when she talks about Elizabeth, who is similar to me. I hate to break it to you, but John doesn't want to leave me. And wasn't it you, Sarah, who wanted us to live together? Shut your mouth. You're telling blatant lies. You should be serving your mother-in-law, not talking back. Sarah always dismisses anything that doesn't suit her agenda, saying a daughter-in-law should simply endure. Come to think of it, it makes sense that John turned out the way he did with a mother like Sarah. I finally gave up on both John and Sarah. So why haven't I divorced John, a man with terrible drinking habits and a penchant for affairs? 3 reasons. First, Elizabeth. When she was little, she adored John. He may have been a cheater, but until Elizabeth started elementary school, he was a loving, perfect father to her. He changed diapers, played with her, and genuinely cherished her. Elizabeth was truly special to me, and all I wanted was for him to continue to be a good husband and father. That's why I found it so hard to take the step toward divorce. But here's the thing. As Elizabeth grew older and more assertive, John reverted back to his old cheating ways. However, he still took care of Elizabeth, so I didn't want to consider divorce until the child-rearing years were behind us. The second reason was money. It might not be a proud thing to say, but when I started thinking of John merely as a source of income, it eased my stress somewhat. John had been a serial cheater even before our marriage. Every time he was caught, it led to a huge argument over whether or not to break up. Although I tried to endure it for Elizabeth's sake, it still angered me. John would beg, "You're the one I really love. I'll never cheat again. Please don't divorce me." Accepting his teary apologies was my first mistake. He got it in his head that, as long as I apologize dramatically, she'll forgive me. Even when I would explode in anger and declare, "I will definitely divorce you this time," John would cling to me crying, and would behave for a while. This became the pattern. I've tried several times to put an end to things with John, but I didn't want to negate all the good memories we had. And he is a kind father to Elizabeth. However, with every affair, my love for him diminishes. So, for example, I changed the beneficiary of John's life insurance from Sarah to myself, and transferred John's savings from his bachelor days into my own fixed deposit account. Nowadays, John doesn't have much in the ways of assets. If you're not planning to leave me, that's fine, right? Since John kept cheating, I had come to terms with thinking of him mainly as the breadwinner. And yet, we were making it work, in a dysfunctional sort of way. Who would have thought he'd die in such a stupid way? It caught me completely off guard. Now, the third and final reason. Sarah thinks she's my trump card for why I didn't leave John. Elizabeth and I can't go back to our family home. My brother currently runs the family estate, and it's a full house with my parents, his wife, their 3 kids, and even my grandmother. So going back home is physically impossible. This happened right after John died. While I was swamped with funeral arrangements, dealing with the police, and managing his affairs, Sarah did none of the work and started drinking during the day. "Seems like I can't handle it sober," she said. Drunk Sarah told me, "Hey, Nancy, you don't have anywhere else to go, do you? I'll keep you here just like before." With a nasty grin. "Uh-huh, but John is gone." It struck me as absurd she'd bring this up before even the funeral, but now that John is gone, I had no intention of putting up with living with her. However, not being able to return home did worry me. Sarah knows this too. "But Nancy, you have nowhere to go back to. Don't forget Elizabeth. She's John's legacy. It's only right you stay here, and you're obligated to take care of me in my old age. You're not planning to hog the inheritance, are you?" Sarah clearly expects me to care for her. John's personal inheritance isn't much, but Sarah doesn't know that. I decided not to respond, and instead asked, "Aren't you sad that John, whom you bragged about so much, is gone?" "Of course I'm sad, but with that foolish end, it's just too embarrassing to talk about. Couldn't he have done it better?" Sarah was angry, but I felt torn. "Is that all you have to say?" Sarah always sided with John, even when he cheated, but in the end, her public image and her future seemed more important to her. Then it hit me. I remembered hearing somewhere that if your spouse dies, your ties to your in-laws don't necessarily get severed. Sarah may be expecting me to take care of her, but there's no way I'm doing that. I excused myself, saying, "I'm sorry, I'm busy with paperwork right now," and ended the conversation. I searched for a lawyer on my mobile phone and decided to consult with them after the funeral. A few weeks went by. It's best to leave it to professionals. They really are different. My lawyer assured me, "You don't need any legal procedures to cut off ties with your in-laws after your husband's death. Apparently, going through the estate distribution process will sever those legal ties." He also kindly explained that there are various forms of public assistance available for single mother households, including housing subsidies for apartments. Given all this helpful information and advice, I decided to take action. I was worried about what to do since I couldn't go back to my hometown, but Elizabeth has grown up and is now in 4th grade. She doesn't require as much attention as she did when she was little, so I resolved to start looking for an apartment for just the 2 of us. I had also consulted the lawyer about John's estate. Luckily, John had transferred most of his assets into my name and had organized all the necessary insurance policies and documents when he changed the beneficiary, so everything went smoothly. Heeding the lawyer's advice, I decided to take legal action against John's mistresses as well. John, ever the meticulous person, had noted down the contact information and addresses of his mistresses, 7 in total. I demanded compensation from each of them, ensuring they financially regretted their involvement with a married man. Time flew by, and before I knew it, John's memorial service was upon us. Sarah was desperate to hide the real reason for John's death from the family, claiming at the funeral that it was a sudden accident. Yet, when Elizabeth stood silently weeping next to John's coffin, no one dared to say a word. I later heard from a relative that everyone had already heard rumors about the real reason. However, out of respect, she couldn't ask detailed questions with the daughter of the deceased present. so she was waiting for the right opportunity. Well, there's a saying that other people's misfortune tastes like honey. It was shocking news about someone close, so she was probably all ears. After the memorial service concluded and dinner began, the drinks started flowing. Once Elizabeth had eaten, she announced, "I'm going to go explore around," and left the table. Seizing the opportunity, one of the relatives asked Sarah, "Is it true that John was having an affair and that it was a terrible situation?" Sarah's face instantly turned furious. She had been drinking, so she couldn't hold back. "Why would you bring that up? Nancy must have told you," she shouted, livid. Accusations based on misunderstandings. The truth was, John's fall had made minor headlines. Moreover, he didn't fall from our house, but from another apartment. A little research would have provided enough clues, but Sarah trapped herself when she admitted, "It's because of a bad wife like Nancy that John was with other women. Nancy is the reason John is dead." All I could muster was, "It's not me. Please calm down." Sarah was in no mood to listen. She blamed me for everything, even went as far as saying, "It's because of a terrible daughter-in-law like Nancy that John cheated. It's Nancy's fault that John died." And when an uncle from the family chimed in saying, "Come on, aren't you going a bit too far?" I was still looked down upon by relatives. They whispered, "No wonder her son couldn't be happy with a mother like that." And, "With a mom like that, the son doesn't stand a chance." On the flip side, people comforted me. They said, "Nancy, you had it rough. Dump a mother-in-law and husband like that, pronto." And, "Don't hesitate to lean on us. We'll be here for you." Sarah, clearly unhappy with the situation, kept drinking and became even more unruly. She even yelled at Elizabeth when she returned to the scene. "I never wanted an unattractive grandchild who takes after her mother. All of you, just get out." Then she passed out. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The next day, Elizabeth and I were busy packing up in the morning when Sarah woke up around noon. When she saw us, she asked, "Where are you planning to go?" "We're leaving, just like you told us to," I answered. Sarah looked surprised for a second, but then smirked. "You're lying, Nancy. Where could you possibly go?" "No, I've rented an apartment. If I can't go back to my parents' house, I'll live somewhere else." "And what about taking care of me?" "You can take care of yourself. Also, I've already sorted out the inheritance." "What are you talking about?" "So now I'm just a stranger, not John's wife anymore." "What? But Elizabeth is John's daughter. She shares my blood. She can take care of me." "No thanks. I won't sacrifice sweet Elizabeth's future for elder care. You announced in front of everyone that we should leave because you don't need Elizabeth, remember? Our relatives are willing to be witnesses. We're leaving, just like you wanted." Last night, after Sarah had gone to sleep, I talked to our relatives and told them we were planning to leave. All the relatives who saw Sarah's outrageous behavior were convinced. Sarah, frustrated that things didn't go her way, stomped her feet. "Then leave John's inheritance behind." "The inheritance is actually negative, just a heap of debt from consumer loans. Can you handle that, Sarah?" John had been cheating all over the place. Even though I was the one managing our savings and his income, I always wondered where he got the money to mess around. It turns out John had been secretly accumulating debt, something I discovered while investigating his affairs and going through his belongings. "How much is it?" Sarah nervously inquired. "Roughly around $30,000. Oh, I'm going to renounce the inheritance, so please take care of it, Sarah." As Sarah stood there speechless, I quickly made my exit. Renouncing the inheritance is the only way to avoid repaying the debt. I have alimony from 7 people and will receive John's life insurance payout. Life insurance isn't subject to inheritance, so renouncing it doesn't affect me. But Sarah can't renounce it, or rather, she can't afford to. After Daniel passed away, as part of inheritance planning, the house she lived in was put in John's name. She can't just renounce the debt and would lose her house if she renounced the inheritance. I don't plan to continue living in the in-laws' house, so I don't mind renouncing it. Fine, I can pay off $30,000. I have a house. I heard Sarah yell from a distance. She's naive. Her only option for repaying is her pension. But the terrifying thing about consumer loan interest is that it compounds. Depending on the monthly repayment, the debt could stay the same or even increase. She'll be in debt forever. Regardless of what happens next, neither Elizabeth nor I plan on helping her out. We made sure to declare this to the relatives after Sarah got wasted at the memorial service, securing their support. After that, Elizabeth and I started living in an apartment. Life is stress-free, comfortable, and happy, just the two of us.